a towel. Before she could react, David pulled her into his arms. He praised her for doing well and becoming Jason's personal maid so quickly. He lifted her chin and stroked her face, but at that moment, another maid interrupted them. The maid asked Alice if anything had happened because Jason had heard her scream earlier. The maid was about to enter the bathroom, but Alice shouted, "I'm not dressed, don't come in." The maid saw Alice in the bathtub, hurriedly apologized, and stepped back out. David, hidden in the bathtub, emerged and kissed Alice forcefully. She was a little panicked, but he, unsatisfied, pulled her into the water and kissed her passionately again. After finishing her shower, Alice explained to Jason that she was slow to avoid getting water in her ears. He gently encouraged her and told her to rest for the day. Just as Jason left, David hugged Alice and kissed her. She struggled, but he pulled her back into the bathroom for another passionate kiss. She slapped him and pushed him away, shouting, "Are you crazy? We're in the Smith family now." David smiled mockingly and said, "Did you forget? I'm also a member of the Smith family." Alice completed her first task, so she demanded the first clue. He leaned in close to her ear and whispered, the accident was related to the Smith family's inheritance struggle. He tried to kiss her again, but she avoided it. He lifted her chin and told her next task was to destroy the engagement between Jason and Rose, the daughter of a wealthy family, so that he wouldn't be able to become the heir. While cleaning by the pool, Alice accidentally fell in. Without hesitation, Jason fell from his wheelchair and pulled her out of the pool. She was surprised by how protective he was. He said, "You should avoid getting water in your ears, so of course, I had to save you." Alice was touched and thought Jason was very gentle and considerate. David saw them from upstairs and became a little jealous. He put an aphrodisiac in a glass of wine and asked Alice to give it to Jason's new assistant, Luna. However, when Alice saw Luna, she hesitated because Luna looked very much like her deceased sister. She couldn't bear to harm such a young girl. So, Alice drank the wine herself and went into Jason's bedroom. She hugged him tightly, unwilling to let go, and even tried to kiss him. At that moment, Jason's fiancée, Rose, walked in and caught them in the act. Rose demanded to know what they were doing, and her father, furious, immediately called off her engagement to Jason. The grandfather and David entered the room as well. David pulled the woman clinging to Jason away, but he didn't expect it to be Alice. He was both angry and speechless, quickly dressed Alice and carried her out of the room. He threw her onto his bed, pinched her chin, and slowly leaned in, accusing her of not completing her task according to his instructions. He intended to leave, but she hugged him from behind. She thought he wanted to kiss her, but instead, he picked up a bucket of ice from the table and poured it all over her head. The grandfather was about to punish Jason, but Luna revealed that Alice had acted strangely after drinking the wine David gave her. David was Jason's uncle, but he had received no respect in the family. Jason's brother, Bruce, mocked David as an illegitimate child, a parasite. In order to protect Alice, David admitted that he had planned the whole incident and nonchalantly claimed it was just a joke. His father, furious, hit his leg with a cane and said, "The Smith family's heir will always be Jason. You bastard don't deserve to compete with him." He ordered his grandson, Bruce, to beat David until he apologized. Bruce knocked David to the ground and beat him with a belt. Alice felt a mix of emotions. Bruce hit David again. But David didn't give in, smiling at him and mocking his weak punches. His attitude angered Bruce, who punched him even harder. Luna then followed Bruce to the poolside. He held her waist and kissed her. It turned out that Luna was working for Bruce, and it was he who had sent her to report on David. Jason handed Alice a first aid kit and asked her to treat David's wounds. She thought Jason was very generous and kind, forgiving David so quickly. She entered David's room, and he smiled as he took a cigarette from his mouth, then asked her, "Now you realize how foolish your tricks were, don't you?" But Alice believed that he deserved the punishment for causing trouble and praised Jason for being considerate. David became jealous, pulled her onto his lap, and asked, "Are you in love with Jason?" He wanted to kiss her, but she avoided it and tried to get up. However, David pulled her back and touched his injured lip. He asked, "Do you really think Jason is a good man?" He tore her dress, grabbed her neck, and kissed her forcefully. She struggled desperately, kicking over the first aid kit on the sofa. Just then, Jason entered the room and asked what was going on. Alice quickly answered, "Sorry, I accidentally spilled the medicine." But as soon as she spoke, she realized her hearing aid had fallen to the ground, revealing that she could hear Jason's words despite pretending to be deaf. She composed herself, crying and begging Jason to help her find the hearing aid. He picked it up and handed it to her. She thanked him as she put it back on. Bruce, curious, asked who had helped Alice when she was under the influence of the aphrodisiac. Alice panicked and accidentally hurt David's wound as she tried to treat it. He grabbed her arm and said, "Little maid, do you want to die?" He gave her a disgusted look and said to Bruce, "First, I'm not interested in deaf women. Second, mind your place. Don't shout at me. Do you really think this deaf woman deserves to climb into my bed?" His insult almost made Alice cry. Jason scolded him for being rude. After Jason and Bruce left, David bit Alice's ear. She screamed, but he covered her mouth and asked, "Have you fallen for Jason? Then you need to learn how to please a man." He tried to kiss her, but she refused, saying she wasn't worthy of kissing him. Jason wanted to apologize to his fiancée, so he asked Alice to help him pick out an apology gift. She gladly agreed. But as soon as she went upstairs, David pulled her into a room. He lifted her and told her, "If you can completely ruin Jason's engagement, I'll give you an important clue about the accident." She obediently agreed. Jason asked Alice to try on several dresses, then he selected a suitable one to give to his fiancée, Rose. But when Alice went to deliver the dress, she deliberately mentioned that it had been tried on by her. Rose was furious, thinking Jason didn't respect her and was giving her a second-hand maid's dress. She slapped Alice and told her, "Go back and tell Jason our engagement is over." The task was completed successfully and Alice smiled. She returned home and apologized to Jason, but he didn't blame her. David found out that Alice had been slapped and brought her a hot towel for her face. However, she felt guilty toward Jason, thinking she was heartless for deceiving such a kind person. David smiled because he was speechless. He grabbed her arm and called her a fool. He told her, "Even without your interference, Rose would never marry a disabled man. Jason was just using you to cancel the engagement." But Alice didn't believe him. She demanded that David fulfill his promise and give her the clue about the accident. He grabbed her by the neck, ready to give her the clue, but Bruce happened to walk by and caught them. Bruce was about to mock them for having an affair, but David, holding a bug, warned Alice to clean his room properly next time. He threw the bug at Bruce and sneered at him. Bruce approached and took out a lighter, provoking David. Alice was surprised to see that the lighter Bruce held was identical to the one used by the killer on the night of the accident. She thought she had found the true culprit, but David also showed her a similar lighter and told her, "Everyone in the Smith family has this lighter." He then revealed the clue. The real culprit is in the Smith family because there was a car missing from the garage that night. Alice asked Jason to take her to the company so that she could help take care of him since he had difficulty moving. Jason gently patted her head and agreed. However, this was actually a new task given to Alice by David, who asked her to monitor Jason at the company and find out what projects he was working on. The next day, Alice followed Jason to the company. His assistant, Luna, pushed Alice aside and said, "Maid is not allowed in the meeting room." But Jason said, "Alice will be my personal secretary from now on. She can come in." As soon as Alice opened the door, a stack of documents flew toward her, but David blocked them. David wanted to compete with Jason for a project and had prepared a proposal. However, his father was very angry, believing that he was unworthy to compete with Jason for the project. Jason was about to attend an important meeting and didn't want to take Alice with him, but she removed her hearing aids and said that she wouldn't be able to hear anything they discussed, so he agreed to let her join. In the meeting, Jason presented his project proposal and quoted a price of $5 million US. However, the client hesitated, saying he needed to discuss it with his boss before replying. When Alice got home, she reported everything she had overheard to David. When David heard Jason knocking on the door, he suddenly kissed her. Jason was searching for Alice, but he had no idea that, at that very moment, she was passionately kissing David. Then, David covered her mouth and told Jason, "She's not with me." After Jason left, Alice tried to leave, but David grabbed her and kissed her again. After the kiss, he handed her a box. Alice opened it to find a new pair of shoes. David had noticed that her heels had bled from wearing high heels earlier in the day, so he bought her a comfortable pair of flats. Alice was touched but confused, not understanding David's feelings. On the day of the signing, the client didn't show up. David entered the meeting room and told his father, "The manager we were negotiating with wanted a kickback, so he delayed signing the deal. I spent some money to bribe him, and in the end, I signed the deal for $4.8 million. His father praised him and assigned him the responsibility for the new project. Jason, suppressing his anger, congratulated David on securing the project, but David remarked that he wanted more than just a new project. Alice was about to push Jason out when David suddenly stopped her, complimenting her new shoes. The atmosphere between the three became tense. Bruce suspected that Alice had leaked the price, but Jason told him, "I suspect you more than Alice." Bruce was furious. He grabbed Alice's arm and accused her of being a traitor. He even tried to hit her, but David stopped him. While Alice was sleeping, Bruce secretly swapped her hearing aids. Then, a maid entered Alice's room and ordered her to go do some work. Alice hurriedly grabbed the headset on the table, but she didn't realize it wasn't her hearing aid. Later, while cleaning the car in the garage, Alice secretly took photos of the cars because she was trying to find the black car that had been driven by the killer. Just then, Bruce suddenly drove up and honked the horn loudly, causing Alice to fall to the ground in shock. She then realized the object on the ground wasn't her hearing aid, but a Bluetooth headset. She pretended to be deaf and begged Bruce to help her find her hearing aid, but Bruce laughed and said, "You're a good actress. If you were really deaf, how did you manage to avoid the car behind you just now?" She cried and explained to Jason, "I noticed it because the car's headlights were too bright. Please believe me." Just when she felt helpless, David applauded as he walked over. He picked Alice up with one arm. Jason tried to stop him, but David said, "Did you not notice she sprained her ankle? Do you, a cripple, want to carry her back?" Jason had no reply but could only watch David take her away. A few days later, Alice met Luna in the company bathroom. Luna mocked Alice for being deaf, but David heard it all and purposely tripped Luna. Luna was furious and swore to get back at Alice. That evening, Alice accompanied Jason to a restaurant to entertain a client. The lecherous client, Jack, took an interest in the pretty Alice and tried to touch her hand, but she pulled away. Jack suggested that he wanted to sleep with Alice for a night, and Jason politely refused. But Jack insisted, and Luna added fuel to the fire, saying, "Jack is an important client. Alice, don't miss this opportunity." At this moment, David walked in and said, "This maid doesn't know how to appreciate a good opportunity. Luna, you're obedient and sensible. You should take this chance." Luna was taken aback by his words. David suggested to Jack that they go to a bar, and Jack agreed enthusiastically. At the bar, Luna suggested Alice go drink with Jack, but Jason stopped Alice. David tripped Luna, causing her to fall into Jack's arms. Jack held her waist and wouldn't let her go. Bruce tried to get Alice drunk, but Jason intervened, saying, "If you want a drink, I'll drink with you." Bruce couldn't understand why his brother always favored Alice, and he was so angry. Later, David dragged Alice into the hallway, choking her and demanding to know why she hadn't informed him in time. To punish her, he forcefully kissed her. She tried to break free, but he held her hand tightly. He ordered her to sabotage Jason's new project, promising he would give her a new clue if she succeeded. Alice actively accompanied Jack to drink, and Jack took the chance to touch her leg. She pretended to be frightened and fell into Jason's arms. Jack was about to pounce on her, but hurt his back, which made him furious. He tried to hit her, but Jason stopped him. Jack felt frustrated, but David told him, "I'll take you to a more fun place." Jack happily followed him. As Alice completed her task, David gave her a new lead. Bruce had once met her father privately. Alice received an anonymous phone call saying the caller had an important item from her father and arranged to meet her. When she arrived at the meeting place, she saw a photo of her father on the table. Just then, Bruce arrived with Jason. Alice realized something was wrong and quickly hid in a wardrobe. Bruce entered the room but couldn't find her and called out, "Alice Brown, come out. I know you're here." He told his brother that Alice Brown, the daughter of the Brown family, had the same name as the maid. Therefore, he suspected that the maid, Alice, was actually Alice Brown. Just as he was about to open the wardrobe, the smoke alarm suddenly went off. Jason urged him to leave, and Bruce had no choice but to leave quickly, carrying Jason. It turned out that David had triggered the smoke alarm. He opened the wardrobe, and Alice let out a sigh of relief when she saw it was him. He patted her head and carried her home. In the car, David suddenly leaned close to Alice, and she closed her eyes, but he was just helping her fasten her seatbelt. At home, Bruce repeatedly tested Alice's identity, but she kept her composure. David embraced her from behind and told her it was time to fight back against Bruce. Her new task was to sow discord between Jason and Bruce. The next day, she pretended to trip and held Bruce's hand. Luna saw this and became jealous, so she distractedly glanced at Bruce while working. Jason noticed Luna's strange behavior, and Alice took the opportunity to ask Jason why Luna was so close to Bruce. Jason then remembered that Luna was hired by Bruce, so he became more suspicious of Bruce. David wanted Luna to accompany him to entertain client Jack, which immediately made Bruce nervous. David asked him, "What are you nervous about? Isn't Luna Jason's assistant?" Bruce pretended to be calm and said, "I'm not nervous. How could I care about an assistant? The woman I'll marry in the future will definitely be a rich heiress from a prestigious family." Luna overheard him and felt heartbroken. Alice suggested taking Jason for a walk around the company, and he agreed. She deliberately took him to a stairwell, where they found Bruce and Luna arguing. Jason overheard their conversation and confirmed that Luna was the spy Bruce had sent to monitor him. Furious, Jason opened the door and decided to fire Luna immediately. Bruce slapped Luna hard, saying that it was because she seduced him that he couldn't resist the temptation. But Jason wasn't interested in his excuses and left with Alice. Jason held Alice's hand and hugged her, telling her, "Now I only have you. Don't leave me." David happened to witness the scene and felt a bit jealous. David gave Alice an audio recording in which Bruce said, "If we want the Brown family to abandon the bid, killing Mr. Brown is a good idea." David told Alice that Bruce was just an accomplice, and if she wanted to know who the mastermind was, it depended on how she performed. Just as David slowly leaned toward Alice, Jason suddenly entered her room. He gave her a bouquet of white roses and thanked her for comforting him earlier. He wanted to confess his feelings, but a noise from the wardrobe interrupted him. When he opened the wardrobe, there was no one inside. After Jason left, David came out of another wardrobe. He choked Alice and then stepped heavily on the flowers Jason gave her. The next day, Jason announced that Alice was his new assistant, which made Bruce furious. He vowed to expose her true identity. David slowly approached Alice by the poolside and flirted with her. Jason asked David if he was interested in Alice, and David replied with a smile, "I like what you like." Jason became angry and warned Alice to stay away from David. During the signing meeting, Jack suddenly changed his mind and didn't sign with David, but instead signed with Jason. It turned out that Luna had dirt on Jack and used it to persuade him to sign with Jason. Additionally, Luna revealed another important piece of information to Bruce. Alice had a secret. To comfort David, Alice gave him a piece of candy. He put the candy in her mouth and then pulled her in for a passionate kiss. After the kiss, he savored the taste and said, "The candy is strawberry flavored. It's very sweet." However, the good times didn't last long. Luna exposed that Alice had undergone plastic surgery and showed documents from the cosmetic surgery clinic. Just as she was about to reveal Alice's real name, David walked in, snatched the documents from her hand, and read aloud, "Her real name is Alice Miller." It turned out that David had swapped the documents from the clinic beforehand. Alice admitted to having undergone surgery, but explained that it was because she thought her appearance was too ugly, and she wanted to become more beautiful. Bruce became enraged and tried to hit Alice, but Jason stopped him. However, Jason's suspicions about Alice grew, and he instructed his subordinates to investigate her. Alice went to Bruce's room and accidentally found a mask under the bed. This mask was the same one worn by the killer in the car accident. She became certain that Bruce was the real killer, but didn't know that Jason, who had been caring for her, also had a big secret. Alice followed Bruce, but was discovered by him. He lured her to a remote mountain and then attempted to kill her with a knife. But Alice kicked him and managed to grab the knife. But he punched her and was about to push her off a cliff. Just then, David arrived and punched Bruce hard. He hugged Alice and comforted her, telling her not to be afraid. Bruce tried to ambush them, but he missed and fell off the cliff to his death. Jason asked Alice why she wasn't at home when Bruce had the accident and where she had gone. David wrapped his arms around her and told Jason, "She was with me at that time." Jason, feeling jealous, asked Alice to accompany him to Bruce's villa to sort through his belongings. At Bruce's house, Alice found a proposal for the acquisition of the Brown family company. Jason asked her what she had found, and she quickly turned around, lying that she had just seen a bug. Later, Alice and Jason went to the poolside, and she was about to ask him if he knew anything about the acquisition when he suddenly pushed her into the pool. He had already figured out her true identity. Alice asked him if he had known all along that she was an informant sent by David. He answered, "Of course, how could I easily trust a suddenly appearing, pretty deaf woman?" It was then that Alice realized the villa wasn't Bruce's, but Jason's. The person who wanted to acquire the Brown company was actually Jason. He admitted it and grabbed her by the collar, pushing her down onto the ground. Alice asked him if he was the one who killed her parents and sister, and he admitted it. He had instructed Bruce to acquire the Brown family company, but Alice's father had firmly rejected him. Jason then ordered Bruce to stage the car accident and kill the Brown family. Jason kidnapped Alice and used her phone to call David. He demanded that David come to the villa alone, or he would kill Alice. When David arrived, he fought with Jason's bodyguard. However, Jason told him that Alice had been locked in a cold storage room at -35 degrees. To save her, David stopped fighting back and was beaten by the bodyguard. Jason demanded that David give up his inheritance of the Smith family, but David just left. Jason, enraged, hit him, and David collapsed to the ground. Jason ordered the bodyguard to kill Alice, but David used all his strength to stop him. Alice cried, thinking that David was in danger. But when the door opened, she saw Jason lying on the ground. David was still alive and told her, "Your life is mine. No one can take it away." He then fainted in her arms. Jason was arrested by the police and sentenced to death. Alice brought flowers to her parents' graves, finally avenging them. David walked over, and she thanked him for always saving her and helping her find the real killer. He extended his hand and said, "Then spend the rest of your life repaying me." She smiled, took his hand, and embraced him tightly.